Kids, we always say that water is a very critical ingredient for life, and that's why typically when we go looking for life elsewhere outside our earth, we look for presence of water. But water also has some weird properties which makes it very useful for various functionings of life, like the photosynthesis. Imagine trees have to pull up water from underground, sometimes meters below the surface, take it to the top leaf, which can be tens of meters above the surface. So the capillary action helps, and capillarity is a very important property of water. It has nice hydrogen bonds which are strong, so when you want to evaporate you have to break that bond and take the energy out, so you cool the water. That's how evaporation happens and cools when we sweat and so on. The other weird property of water is, of course, that if you keep cooling it, density will keep increasing, as you can imagine. And once you go below 4 degrees centigrade, it does something weird. It begins to increase in volume, so the maximum density happens around 4 degrees C. It depends on various salts present and so on. So the density of water actually increases when it freezes, which means sea ice in your glass, they float above water, and typically only 10% of the volume is shown above the water surface, 90% is below. Now you imagine this big chunk of glacier that's floating around in the North Atlantic that drifted down from somewhere north, and 90% of it is below. The ship's captain of the Titanic knew that's bad news, so he tried hard to steer the ship away but couldn't, and then he crashed into it. Of course, massive volume of glacier damaged the entire ship and sank it. So we have lots of useful properties of water like this. Water, of course, increases its volume as you heat it above 4 degrees centigrade as well. So its density is minimum at 4 degrees C and increases below that and increases above that. And it has, of course, the ability to dissolve so many things like salt, sugar, and carbon dioxide. When you dissolve so much carbon dioxide, you get drinks like sodas, Coke and Pepsi and so on, thumbs up. But also you get acidification in the ocean because pH drops, water becomes acidic, and that can be bad news for corals and other shell forming organisms, right?